Hello there, welcome back to the abridged commentary of the Thera mod in Medieval Total War 2, playing as the privateers, where in the previous part we took out a bunch of rebels and took their territory. However, then the warriors of Kukulcan decided to attack us, and we immediately lost a couple of territories. They took us by surprise, and now we're turning around from our old front line to start fighting back against them. Firstly, we're going to take out this army that's besieging one of our recent captures. In this case, we have an advantage from the start, and we have a AI advantage, I guess you could say. We outrange the enemy with our gun units at the front of the formation here. So this causes a few enemies to run forwards and try to do something about that, I guess, as the two armies close together. But they're just sending one unit at a time. So you can see here this archer unit, while running into range, is being cut down. That's going to work pretty well for us, especially when they start trying to go into loose formation, further delaying any attacks they might make against us. Unfortunately, we're not playing Shogun 2, we can't exploit this until we win the battle. There is some kind of failsafe that causes the AI to switch into attacking mode, so here they come. Although they do have an army that is mostly archers, slingers and javelin throwers, range units basically. So what we see is they kind of cluster up together in the middle, start trying to get into loose formation ready to skirmish, and all the while we've got like 10 units of archers raining arrows on them, so we're doing some nice damage. And we've also got some cav to use. One unit's going off to the back there to fight the enemy general, who's going towards a reinforcement unit I have behind the enemy army, and the other unit is sniping away on our left flank. Or they were, until I ordered them to just charge, because with the enemy being mostly ranged units, there's not much point going for a ranged battle. We can just charge at them and turn this into a classic Total War skirmish route, where the enemy either rout away from you, or they skirmish forever and just lose the ability to fight. Our cav, by the way, can shoot while running, making them extra good at chasing skirmishing units, because they'll just shoot them at point blank range. Which, speaking of, is happening right here. The last pockets of enemy infantry get surrounded by my gunners who can shoot into the back for big damage. In this case the battle is over, but we're going to keep fighting because there were a couple of enemy generals alive on the field. There's one there, walking right through my troops. No attempt to stop the rout there. Feels like I'm playing Total War Troy now. But yes, we need to chase those enemy generals down just to make sure they die, because if it ends the battle, the game might decide to leave them alive. Once that's done, we get to here, 160 casualties, over 1,000 kills. That's what we like to see. So we're in perfectly good condition to go on and do some more stuff against Kukulcan, although not this turn. We've at least saved that one settlement. Now we'll start moving south. From there, we'll have the enemy's core territory to our east, and the stuff they just stole off us to the south, which of course we know is where one of their armies is. But when the next turn comes about, we see there is now an army further to the west standing here, and that's probably the same one we saw earlier taking the place just off to the east. So with that intel in mind, we can rest assured that it's probably okay to go south and attack the place we recently lost. There are other options though, which I was tempted by here. There are 3 settlements we can go for with our gigantic move range, including that one straight to the east, which is kind of like at a choke point cutting off the rest of the Kukulcan core territory. So I was interested by that, but I ultimately decided to just sneak forwards, throw down some watchtowers, and then start going south, since it would be nice to avoid absolute chaos when it comes to the borders, of course. Also, going south allows us to take some targets of opportunity. There are some weak enemy armies moving about over here, so we can kill them now before they form up and join the bigger forces or anything like that. The first one goes down to a nice easy auto-resolve. Unfortunately, we now can't get far enough south because I didn't take a direct route to go and attack the place I wanted to attack, but we can confirm with this spy that there's not much there. I go and auto-resolve the other army that was on the way. Not the best auto-resolve, I suspected it could be bad, which is why I did the old safety save. But we'll just take the losses there because I can't be bothered to get a better result, and we carry on south. In the next turn we arrive, however, there is actually a full stack here, so my gambit that they wouldn't be here based on my intel was incorrect, and the reason for that is they just have loads of armies. They're here and the other place in the west at the same time. They're also up and right of us with a couple of stacks wandering around that I've spotted so far. So overall, we're just outnumbered. We just have to do something about this, and with the big movement range, the risk was that we just get swarmed by loads of armies and attacked, and it almost happens. As you can see, we do kind of get swarmed by enemy armies coming out of the fog of war. But they don't actually challenge us here. They're just setting up. Looks like maybe we're about to fight everything at once next turn. So that's why I want to take this chance to get out of here and get to a better position if I can. The question is, what is that better position? Well, one thing I can do is link up with a bunch of units over here to the west. I thought that place would be attacked, so I recruited tons of stuff there. We've still got that bit of our home territory that we know has an enemy army in it, so that was part of the reason for that. But what I decided to do is fight my way back towards those reinforcements, and on the way, actually go after one of the stacks that's around me right now, just to reduce their numbers. Then our army can be replenished with the new units coming from the west, and we'll see how things look after that. In this fight, it was another case where the enemy were persuaded to send a few troops forwards on their own, perhaps by the presence of our long-range gun troops. And indeed, we shoot at them a bit as they come in, plus we've got our archer line that can shoot at them. They're using fire arrows because technically this is a night battle, but I've done the trick someone told me ages ago, where if you press wait on a night battle, it happens in the day, but it still counts as a night battle, so that's handy, isn't it? Anyway, we stand around for a bit and skirmish with the enemy as they keep sending stuff forwards, like we can see here. And this is perfect for me, because we have absolutely loads of ranged units, so a skirmish is great. But they are now starting to send things forward to run at us. We can just put forward our thin line of melee troops in front of our stuff and keep shooting. And really it's not all that bad because they barely have any melee troops. They're mostly ranged again, and of course that means once I just charge in with the cav all over the place, it's going to be the skirmish route thing, which is extra powerful because when something tries to skirmish away from you, it turns around, so the arrival of the cav counts as a rear attack, making the rout even more likely. And there we go, everything's routing. We need to continue and start hacking our way to the magic 85% number, which is enough to delete the stack. A pretty good result. We lost barely anything, and that's one enemy army out of the way. Not a full army or anything, but that's going to reduce their numbers. Now then, I can start bringing over the reinforcements from the west. Taking out those rebels on the way, might as well. And with our big movement range, we can get involved right now. In fact, what we can do is an old school garrison cancelling siege by bringing in the weaker army to start a siege. Here, the enemy can't react to this. And then, all the stuff that's trapped outside the fortifications will be vulnerable to our real army. It doesn't work, because in this case their army retreats, and then because we're too close to the settlement, we're sucked into the zone of control and can't move, so we end up just standing here, but at least our two armies are standing next to each other. The question now then is, will they grab together all of their other stuff and spam troops at us? We need to spam some more troops onto the front line, and I do actually have this other army at Fort Elizabeth, our capital, but it's just sitting there partially to defend against the enemy army that I suspect is to the south, and also because we can't really afford to field it. You can see most of the army is currently in free garrison slots. So if I actually move the army, they'll be in trouble, and if I only move the part of the army that isn't free, they could be attacked and defeated by an enemy army. So not much is happening there. We're now in the next turn. You can see the enemy have just sort of hung about in this area. In the top right of the screen, you can see the light blue faction is distracting the enemy armies off up there. The light blue faction is at war with the yellow faction. They're just not attacking them very aggressively. They're mainly just walking around each other. But you can see it does eventually lead to what I was going for last turn. I'm able to have a siege, cancelling one stack from the fight, and then fight just another stack with my main army. It means my reinforcements are cancelled as well, but this favours me because of the unit caps in battles. In this fight I was able to manoeuvre on top of a hill above the enemy army while they just stood there, and then we can snipe away with our gun units. And this time they don't send units forward, they just stood there and took it. This is the true Shogun 2 exploit. So we can kill a few guys, but eventually they realise what's going on and run up the hill. My archers aren't doing a very good job of shooting at the enemy as they approach because of the shooting into the sky thing. What I need to do is get my melee troops forwards a bit to perhaps give the archers more space so they're less tempted to shoot straight up. Still seems to be happening right here. Pretty annoying, but where they are shooting normally, they might actually be getting some hits, and indeed, we see enemy units routing just from the ranged attacks, which is sort of unusual for Total War games, especially mods, where they usually increase morale a lot. We are in a night battle again, technically, which is reducing enemy morale, and we are facing trash, of course. This army isn't quite so only ranged, so I can't just attack from all sides and immediately kill them, but I can almost immediately kill them using this technique, because everything starts skirmishing around, they're being hit by arrows the whole time, and the few melee units they do have, well, they're probably better than mine. They don't have time to kill me before the entire army chain routes, and that's the end of that. Well, not really, of course, because we need to get ourselves to the 85%. With our 3 units of cav, that's easy enough. Once they get to the number, we can just leave the fight, and rest assured the game will delete the rest. Another really good result, barely any losses on our side, and an enemy army just taken out of the picture, meaning now we actually have something of an advantage here, although with that big stack in a fortified position and with us having seen how powerful the towers are, there's no guarantee we can actually make much of this situation without making a big mess at the same time. I was stuck in the zone of control again after the battle, so the main army can't move, but what I could do is end the siege with the backup army now that the main army is doing the siege as well, and go for this little group nearby. Not all that important, but it does give us an opportunity. We can beat them with an auto-resolve and then release prisoners. That will cause the prisoners to go back to the nearest friendly settlement, which in this case is under siege, so they just go near the settlement. This is the setup for a siege draw-out, where now I could lift the siege and attack the small army, but I actually can't because my main army's already been stuck in a zone of control. It can't move this turn. So I couldn't do it. Instead, what I did is move my backup army, or part of it, back over to the west to link up with a few more troops, and then start moving north to do something about the enemy occupying this area. I got bored of waiting for them to come and attack me, so we're going to attack them. We need to get this place back. Now this army isn't going to be strong enough to do it, of course. Even with the enemy sallying out, we might get taken out. But I can now deploy the bit I'm paying for, at least, of the Fort Elizabeth garrison. Unfortunately, they can't get into the army this turn, but they can get kind of close and run up to the back of the town. If the enemy sallied, they would be able to fight me without those reinforcements, so it's still a bit dangerous, but I'll just tell you now, they didn't sally, so we're going to leave that as it is. Now back to this situation. Although I didn't get the siege draw-out I wanted last turn, it seems that the small enemy army was pushed about by the blue faction armies nearby, which have shown up, and they got pushed to just be on the other side of the town, where I can still do the siege draw-out, and my main force has been reinforced by bits of the secondary army before I withdrew, by the way, so we're a bit stronger than before. Meaning, this is the perfect time for a decisive battle to avoid having to fight on the walls. They caught me off guard a bit here. I was doing my usual walking about at 6 times speed before the battle really starts. But one of their units is rushing over towards me. I figured they would take all of their reinforcements and put them on the hill with their original units. But no, they are coming at us with some dinosaurs, no less. I'm going to stop in this awkward formation because it will at least allow the archers to start firing at them. There are only a few, they're taking cover behind these pillars, but that's going to be enough to get rid of them. So yes, seems like Warhammer influence is seeping in, or maybe whatever Warhammer was influenced by. We've got a Lizard Aztec crossover thing, or Mayans I should say. Anyway, they eventually sent more stuff towards us. This unit gets stun-locked by a barrage of arrows and takes a few casualties. The arrows probably aren't that powerful, they're only really good when we're shooting at the enemy's trash like their own archers. Against units with stats, they may not be so good, but like these guys here, these spear throwers, they're in trouble. They're going to get shot to pieces, and the AI is going to make them dance around, reform, generally not do very much, so they'll take extra losses. And what I've been noticing in these battles, checking the results afterwards sometimes, is that it's usually the archers getting virtually all the kills. Our pirates and our pikemen are doing virtually nothing in these fights. There was a mistaken order trying to get the melee troops to go forward and accidentally ordering the archers forward. Luckily I caught it, that wasn't a guarantee. And here we are with the setup we want. Our melee stuff locks the enemy melee stuff in place. Our cav are now getting to work. On one flank we're gunning them in the back. On this other flank I'm just charging into this huge blob of ranged units to set them into the permanent skirmish mode. Somewhere we took out an enemy general. That's going to help out, and already we're seeing stuff routing away from the melee fights. And that's that really. The battle is effectively over. It's immediately going to come down to just chasing things off the field once we've forced all these ranged units to rout, that is. And we do want to do quite a lot of chasing in this battle, since it is a siege drawout, and getting even the 85% doesn't guarantee that everything will die. Because the 85% is an average, you need to make sure you've killed 85% or more of the second army. Here was what I eventually got. I wasn't sure I'd actually done it here. We have left a couple of hundred guys alive in the garrison. But luckily enough, it met the threshold. So afterwards, everything has disappeared, the town is empty, and we move on in. We've done it. We've successfully taken this place back, and overall, the last set of battles we just did proved to be much easier than expected in all cases, so we're doing much better than I think we're supposed to be. Our units don't seem like they're very good, but somehow the enemy are just being easily routed by us. Perhaps our guy has really high dread or something. I don't think I've checked my leader's stats. But yes, now I do have the option of moving on to the northeast and attacking the next place, but there's something going on there between the blues and the yellows. I was happier to kind of just let them do something. Maybe the blue faction will kill some of the yellow faction for me. In the meantime, I tried to hide in some trees, but that didn't work basically. I can never get the ambushing and the hiding to work in Medieval 2, and this was certainly no exception. Moving on into the next turn. As mentioned, there was no sally with that dangerous siege I set up, so now we can unify everything and have a much less dangerous siege. I'll start putting some equipment together there. Now, I wasn't really sure what to do with the main force. Obviously, we can look to the east, where the next logical target is, but there is quite a lot of stuff there. There is the potentiality, though, we could just hack through all of it, because we've killed so many armies now. I'm starting to think not very much of this yellow faction. But then I started thinking, maybe I can pop up here. There's some sort of big mess on the way, as our spy reveals. But yes, there's another settlement up there which is also in movement range and is poorly defended. Here's me checking that the yellow guys and the blue guys are at war, because they're all kind of intertwined with their armies. It doesn't really seem like they're fighting each other very hard. I'm guessing they're just constantly backing down from fights. But anyway, after seeing the situation, I thought yes, I will bypass the logical expansion choice and go for this one. It's nice because it choke points the enemy's core territories further in. There are two more castles that I presume they start the game with up there. So I sit there besieging it, and here's what happens in response. We get swarmed with stuff, but not very much stuff. They could have come over with like 3 full armies, but they didn't. They came over with like 4 little bits of armies. In response, I'm going to throw some more troops of my own in. I had these reinforcement archers on the way over. They arrive and push the enemy back a bit, or one of the enemy groups back. Now I'm going to start a fight, because we can draw in 4 of the armies into one battle, but with those 4 armies being quite small, that's not too bad for us. The balance bar's still in our favour. I'm going to have to pull in all of my real units as reinforcements, which will delay the start of the fight. Luckily, this is an abridged campaign, so you don't have to see that. We ended up with a chaotic kind of fight, because the enemy groups are all coming in from different directions, and they didn't unify or anything. So it's just like the odd bit of an army coming in mainly on our 2 flanks actually, which was a bit inconvenient to micro because I couldn't see them both at the same time. So I'm jumping backwards and forwards trying to sort something out. I think I've put my melee line too close to the archers again because they're not firing very efficiently. The vast majority of their shots were just going into the sky. Still, it was enough to beat back 1 unit of enemy archers skirmishing with us and take out a few melee infantry. Eventually, most of the stuff has arrived to the battle, and we've got these little blobby fights happening here and there. You can see here how many of the arrows are falling downwards. Very few arrows hitting the enemy from the front. I think the hillside is messing it up as well because we're slightly on a reverse incline. Annoying. But as you can see by the balance bar, we pretty much have this. Stuff is starting to rout away as we just do cav rear attacks and generally outnumber them in this fight. There isn't really a chance for the enemy to do much to us, aside from things like this, where because I've had to turn skirmish off our gun cav to make them kind of work, because they'll skirmish away before they fire otherwise, they actually can get caught in melees, and they're not very good in melee either, so they die quite quickly. Speaking of dying quickly, we've got flashy numbers death on our pikes, because an enemy archer unit is shooting into them. Pretty good move, since they'll be weak against that. But at this stage we can just charge forwards with everything and drive those archers back. Looks like they're driving us back here, as I have now activated skirmish mode on my commander to avoid him actually dying. It's not actually that critical to shoot the enemy at this stage, so it's better to keep our faction leader alive, I suspect. We just need to go around and force the last couple of somehow not routed units to rout, and that'll be the end of that. Which includes those melee guys I was just escaping from. Looks like the skirmish thing happened again, because they're fighting with my pistol troops, who no doubt had to be off skirmish in order to fire their pistols at close range. I don't really know, we need to look into that whole skirmish with pistols thing, because it might be safe. Anyway, we move on, everything routes, I get as many kills as I can, and we end up diminishing all 4 of the armies involved in the fight. For 100 losses, 5% casualties, not too bad. And now we get the satisfying moment when all of these annoying enemy flags will fall out of the way, thus revealing our intact army behind. If anything, this is a victory for the UI, because now I can click on things easier. Once they're out of the way, we might want to think about doing something with the town here, because there is still a chance for a siege draw-out actually. Those troops outside could be made to start a siege draw-out. However, instead, I decided to just attack the town, because we can night attack it to cancel out those reinforcements, and there's not actually very much on the inside. So I figured we can probably kill them. Obviously, I do not trust the auto-resolve. I think I'm being too paranoid about auto-resolves. It's after playing the Nan Man campaign in Total War 3 Kingdoms, and it was all glitchy and messed up. I've become too distrustful of the game, but yeah, the results we've seen so far in this campaign have been very accurate, I think, so good auto-resolves. And in this case, yes, we were able to get in there without too much trouble. That's the town taken. From here we could go on to attack the enemy's core provinces, but what I want to do is kind of leave a few troops here if I can, as a choke point to distract armies coming in from those regions, and instead send my main force to go backwards and go after the territory I missed. And actually, in the very next turn, I spotted this opportunity, because as the yellow and blue armies dance around each other, they've ended up in a setup that allows me to siege draw out that massively garrisoned settlement with only a couple of units outside the best setup. Although actually they have managed to get an even balance bar this time, so it's not quite as easy as the earlier battles. You saw me checking there to see what my dread is, because it finally occurred to me to check. Not even that high, so we can get more feared and more morale shocks on the enemy if we get more executee, which we certainly will. So yes, we'll start the next part with this decisive battle for this random place. Going to be harder than the other ones, but I have pretty high confidence it's going to be fine, given that there are so many ranged units in this army, and we can probably just skirmish them all off the field without taking too much damage.